In this video, we'll be running through why Advantage Plus is bad for advertisers and brands. We'll be talking about the incentive structures of big tech, how that ties into third-party attribution softwares, as well as becoming first-order profitable. We'll then be tying into the default attribution, as well as targeting and optimization settings of Advantage Plus, how that ties into blended CAC targets. And we'll then be going through an actual example of two products that would be running within an Advantage Plus campaign and ruining the profitability of a brand. And therefore, you can take away how you should be structuring these campaigns and approaching them. So let's start off. Why Advantage Plus is bad for advertisers and brands. Incentive structure of Meta. So the incentive structure of all big tech advertising platforms is to maximize their own revenue. This is the case for Google. This is the case for Facebook. So how does Google and Facebook maximize advertiser revenue? The primary way that they do it is to attribute as much revenue as possible to the platform. If you're under the assumption that Facebook is driving 60%, 70, 80% of your total revenue, you're number one, going to definitely continue spending on the platform. Number two, you're probably going to increase your spend on the platform. And so Facebook and Google want to do everything that they can to attribute as much of your revenue, or if you're a service-based business, as many of your leads as possible to the platform to give you this false hope that the platforms are actually driving the majority of your revenue. However, what you'll find in majority of ad accounts is you could cut ad spend by 25% tomorrow and new customer acquisition won't change. So why is that the case, and why does this tie into Advantage Plus? The issue with Advantage Plus is you're giving away control on audience targeting, which it gives the control to Facebook. It's the exact same thing that Google did with Performance Max. You get less control over where you want to be placing, and so Google can go and heavily prioritize existing visitors or existing customers and optimize for retargeting. It's exactly what Advantage Plus does. Advantage Plus heavily retargets, and we see this when we look at third-party attribution softwares. So, for example, we have a campaign here. This client's campaign is sitting at a 6 ROAS in platform, but when we look at Triple Whale new customer ROAS, and how Triple Whale calculates new customer ROAS is they track the exact conversions to the actual order on the back end of Shopify, and they determine whether that order is tagged as a new customer or an existing. We're sitting at a 0.61, so it's 10x lower than what Facebook's reporting. Now, what they did with Advantage Plus, which was quite smart, is you can do audience segmentation. So you could put your audiences in, you could do existing visitors, existing purchases, your existing customer list as well, and you'll be able to get a breakdown of how many conversions are coming from existing customers versus returning, and you can then put a bid cap on those users. It's not very accurate. In fact, it's pretty bad, to be completely honest. And we know this because we've looked at it across multiple different accounts and cross-referenced it with third-party attribution softwares. And they don't really do a good job. They're still super heavy on retargeting. And so what ends up happening with these campaigns is you scale ad spend, return on ad spend seems to remain about the same, right? So it seems that there's incremental value increases within platform, but if you contextualize to the actual store revenue and do actual incrementality testing, you'll see that there is really no incremental value, conversion value, revenue value increase when you scale these campaigns in majority of accounts. Now, there's always going to be exceptions. That's half of the accounts it works, half it doesn't. But they're not very good for improving new customer acquisition because they heavily retarget, because Meta's incentive structure pushes them to heavily retarget existing visitors because they're easier to convert than new customers. You're always going to have a lower CPA or a higher return on ad spend if you're going after existing visitors, existing audiences, existing customers, rather than going out and prospecting and finding new audiences. And this then ties into becoming first order profitable. So a lot of brands these days aren't running at first order profitability. It's really important to understand your unit economics on first purchase and then be able to understand what your target CAC should be per order. Most brands are operating at CACs that are way above their first order margin where they can build in first order profitability. Why is that the case? The reason why that's happening is because in-platform return on ad spend is looking good on Google and on Facebook, in Performance Max and in Advantage Plus. And brands are going, okay, let's put more ad spend there, and they're putting ad spend in. ROAS is somewhat maintaining, or let's say ROAS is actually tapering off, but the brand or the marketer doesn't understand incrementality in terms of ROAS. And so they're scaling ad spend with little understanding that the additional ad spend is gaining revenue at a 0.2 or 0.4, 0.5 return on ad spend. And what I mean by this when it comes to incrementality testing, and this is a video in itself, is that If you have, let's say, like a target ROAS of 10 and you're spending $10,000 a month, and then you go and you increase your spend, and let's say in this instance, your ROAS is 11, and you go and you increase your ad spend to 11K per month, and your ROAS dips to a 10. A lot of people would quickly look at that at a top level and go, oh, that's fine, right? We scaled ad spend, but we're still hitting our target ROAS, so that was successful. But it wasn't, because what actually happened here was you spent an extra $1,000 and you generated an extra $0 in revenue. So there was no increase in revenue, you just increased spend, and yes, ROAS was still above your target, but there was no incremental revenue increase. Now, this is an extreme example, and most people would be able to see this and identify it, but it's when it comes to really fine-tuned numbers that people don't notice this. For example, if this dropped to 10.7, what ends up happening here is this, which is this, which is unprofitable, right? We increased spend by $1,000 and we only increased rev by 700. This is incredibly unprofitable for really any brand, no matter how good your LTV is. But from a top level, this doesn't look bad. When you look at tracking ROAS and spend as two core KPI metrics, it's not bad. ROAS only went down by 0.3. So that's what I mean by becoming profitable on first order ends up becoming an issue of not understanding incrementality testing and incremental revenue increases in accordance with spend increases. And number two, increasing ad spend in Advantage Plus and Performance Max, and all that spend just goes to existing customers. You're not actually going after new customer acquisition, and so you end up just inflating your CAC. So that's number one, why Advantage Plus is bad for advertisers, and that's that train of thought. Let's go down the other train of thought, which is your performance goal. So anytime you create a campaign, an ad set, your default performance goal within Facebook is maximizing for the number of conversions. This is the same as trying to achieve the lowest CPA as possible. We want to acquire orders for the lowest cost possible. Why is that a bad thing? And by the way, 90% of people are running this on Advantage Plus. Most people don't know to switch this setting or don't even really understand why this setting is hurting them. So let me run you through why. Most people have blended CAC or blended ROAS targets or blended MER. It really depends on how you want to structure. It could be acquisition MER, it could be MER, etc. People blend them. Okay, so overall we have an MER target of 4. Overall we have an AMER target of 2. Or overall we have a CAC target of 50%, which means that of our revenue, we're happy to spend 50% of that to acquire the customer. Okay, fantastic. But let's actually look at an individual product level and see what happens and see why this completely ruins the profitability of your brand. Let's say you're selling this SKU and this SKU. One's a hoodie, one's a t-shirt. Similar product, similar range. We put it in the same ad set, or we put it in the same campaign. This one has a retail price of 90. This one has a retail price of 50. Cost of delivery is 21 and 13. And then we have an assumed CAC. And this is where a blended CAC or a blended MER serves you wrong. Because you're then going to say that we're happy to acquire this customer for 45 and this for 25. Okay, that's fine. But the profit contribution on the hoodie ends up being $24, whereas this instance it's 12. So it's 2x more profitable to acquire hoodies at a 50% CAC than it is to acquire for t-shirts. Okay. But the campaign's optimizing for the lowest CAC or the lowest CPA possible. And so what the campaign's going to do is this data will roll through at the campaign level. Obviously, Facebook doesn't have access to profit contribution numbers, so it's just looking at CAC, and it's going, this product has a much lower CAC. In fact, almost 2x less. Let's push all spend and optimize towards this product. And now your campaigns are optimizing towards selling t-shirts at a $12 profit contribution when you could be selling hoodies at a $24 profit contribution. And that doesn't even take into consideration the entry point combination that then results in the strongest customer lifetime value off the back end. That's a whole nother story, a whole nother video. But just on first order profitability, you can see what happens here. When you let your campaigns by default optimize for the lowest CPAs. And this is what 99% of people are doing because people don't understand. It's such a small setting. It's such a small little line item in there. And people don't understand that having blended goals does this to profit contribution. And this applies to Google as well, right? If you have both of these products within a Performance Max campaign or a shopping campaign for that matter, and you're optimizing for conversions, what ends up happening is the campaign will heavily prioritize this product. Okay, but most people know that optimizing for maximized conversions isn't a good idea on Google, because most people should know that that's always going to be the case. Google will just prioritize the cheapest products. So yeah, we're using maximized conversion value. So obviously it'll prioritize this. No, it won't. It will still prioritize this product because it has the same ROAS. The ROAS here is 2, and the ROAS over here is 2. The difference is it's much easier for the campaign to put volume through a cheaper product than it is through a more expensive product. So your performance max will still prioritize the t-shirt. So you need to be very, very understanding of how the back-end models are working and optimizing what KPIs they're optimizing towards, so that you can get an understanding of how to be structuring and setting up your campaigns to gear towards maximizing profit contribution. Because if all you're doing is looking at blended CAC or MER numbers, you'll end up in a situation where you're prioritizing SKUs, product ranges, entry points that aren't going to result in becoming first order profitable. And so the reason why Advantage Plus is bad for advertisers is because it does heavy remarketing to maximize attributed revenue, so that you think Advantage Plus is working well, but it's not. It's just a big, heavy retargeting campaign that's claiming all your conversions through one-day view attribution. That's then going to cause you to overinflate spend and not be first order profitable. And then on top of all of that, it by default maximizes for number of conversions, which using your blended KPI targets as a brand ends up resulting in you pushing the lowest profit contribution products possible within your campaigns and prioritizing towards them, which breaks the entire P&L of the brand.